welcome to Leo Roundtable at leoroundtable.com. My name is Chip DeBlock, and I'm your host. We're a group of law enforcement professionals that talk about law enforcement issues, but we do it from a law enforcement perspective. And I'm going to go to introduce the crew to you guys, if you don't mind waiting for the video portion of our show. We have attorney and former federal prosecutor Ward Mythaler. We also have, I believe, all retired this evening, Major Ronald McMullen, Captain Brett Bartlett, Corporal David D. Gresta, and producer Will Statzer. So thanks, guys. Hey, I also want to give a shout out to our sponsors. We have Extra Duty Solutions, Gunlearn.com, Veridian Weapon Technologies, and Guardian Alliance Technologies. And we are also powered by PEXIP. So thanks to all those entities for helping make this show happen. Hey, we've got a great lineup. I know we've got one Las Vegas story, and too bad Randy Sutton's out of town doing a conference this week. But anyhow, our first one, it's one of our favorite writers on Police One, Ken Wallentine. It's on policeone.com. All hell breaking loose, not connected to failure to train. This is in reference to Huff versus Reeves. Hopefully Ward's going to be able to talk about this to dumb it down for the rest of us. And it starts off talking about one winter morning, Julie Huff, she went to her bank to access her safety deposit box. And then it says all hell broke loose. So Cedric Norris, he goes into the bank, he murders the bank president, he grabs money from the tellers, and he takes Miss Huff hostage, forces her to drive the getaway vehicle. So officers pursue Huff and Norris. And remember, Norris is the bad guy. So a trooper did a pit maneuver, struck the rear of the vehicle, forces it to spin out, and the crash. And at some point, someone broadcast on the radio that the car contained two female suspects, one white and one black. But the initial report was that there was a black suspect dressed as a female and that there was a white female hostage. So Norris, our bad guy, he bails out of the car, opens fires at the trooper and the deputy, and Huff jumps out. Huff is the hostage now, jumps out of the driver's side and raises her arms and flees in the opposite direction towards a police car. But as she runs, she's actually shot twice. She falls to the ground and she calls out, "Stop shooting me, stop shooting me." The officers continue to shoot her at least 8 more times as she lays on the ground. So Norris, our bad guy, comes over to her, used her as a rest and as a human shield as she's laying on the ground. When the trooper saw Norris's face drop to the ground, of course, Norris is the bad guy. When his face drops to the ground, trooper stops firing and calls for medical assistance. So Huff, the hostage, was shot a total of 10 times, and it was, they say, unclear who fired each round, which I don't know why, but at least 3 rounds were attributed to the state trooper. It also says that hostage Huff, she filed a lawsuit for violations of her civil rights, and she's alleging that the Oklahoma Highway Patrol trooper Chris Reeves used excessive force against her in violation of her 4th and 14th Amendments. And also, she sued the McIntosh County Sheriff Kevin Ledbetter for failure to properly train his deputies. The trial court granted summary judgment to the sheriff and to the trooper. The court ruled that the trooper did not violate Huff's constitutional rights because she did not show that he intended to shoot her. The judge also ruled that Huff failed to identify any specific training deficiency in the sheriff's office related to the shooting, and the Court of Appeals affirmed. And lastly, it says here that the court reversed the trial court decision on the 4th Amendment claim against the trooper. The appellate court held that Huff showed a genuine issue of material fact on whether the trooper shot her intentionally. And because it is clearly established in the circuit that an officer may employ deadly force against a person who poses no threat, that they may not employ deadly force against a person that doesn't have threat, Reeves is not entitled to qualified immunity at that particular stage in the proceedings. And Ward, I'll have you cover the rest of it, if that's okay. But that's what I have. It's a interesting decision. Ward Mythaler, the floor is yours.
Fascinating case, fascinating set of facts. By the way, the opening line of the case was, on January 21, 2016, was a terrible day for Miss Huff. Then the line, all hell broke loose. Indeed it was. Short civics lesson. Most of the cases we discuss involve liability of an officer all by itself. We rarely see decisions involving the agency. The Supreme Court has held that the word person in the Civil Rights Statute includes county and municipal agencies, does not include a state agency because the state's protected by the 11th Amendment. But the suing agency of the county or the municipality, like a police department or a sheriff's office, it's a very high standard. You have to show that a policymaker made the decision or that the policy itself was unconstitutional. For a while, attorneys were using lack of training as a policy. The courts came up with a very high standard, deliberate indifference. So it's very hard to show deliberate indifference in training when it comes to a police department. It's almost impossible to show an unconstitutional policy because municipalities try not to do things that are unconstitutional. This case was an easy one in terms of no liability for lack of training. Only the deputy's office, the sheriff's office, was sued. There was nothing in the policy that would have allowed him to shoot at an unarmed woman who was surrendering. And I don't think he was shooting at her anyway. And I don't think they had proof that he himself was shooting at her. I think that virtually all the shots that hit her, at least 8, were fired by the trooper. The facts with respect to the individual liability are just staggering here. You heard most of it at the bank. In addition to what Chip said, the gunman also shot another bank officer in the stomach, grabbed Julie Huff as a hostage. They got to the field, and the bad guy ran away, and Julie Huff ran the other way, shot twice, laid down, begged them not to shoot again, and of course she was shot 8 more times. Now, the reason they can't tell for sure who shot who is because most of the bullets went through her. One bullet stuck in her pelvis, and that was definitely fired by the trooper. There were a total of 31 shots fired by the trooper, 6 shots only fired by the other 2 officers, which means not 3, but at least 4 shots for sure were shot by the deputy, by the trooper. In addition, the police officer was at the bank. He got a description that the white woman was a hostage and that the black person who was dressed as a woman was the bad guy. So I seriously doubt that he was shooting at the white woman who had her arms up. And he shot 4 times. I suspect that at least 8 of the shots that hit Julie Huff were fired by the state trooper. What makes this case so amazing is that the trooper claimed that it was accidental, that he never saw the white woman who he shot at least 4 times and probably at least 8 times, never saw her until they actually approached the scene after the bad guy was dead and she was unconscious. It's also amazing that this woman survived all this, but she did. So, interesting case, good decision, correct decision. I would have liked to have seen a failure to train claim against the state agency, but as I say, you could not do that because of the 11th Amendment.
Now, Ward, there was reference in the article that they're kind of sporadic, I guess, about, failure to train lawsuits. I guess there's, they're tough to win. So do you have any experience with those or?
No, I never did one. They are tough to win because you have to show deliberate indifference in your training. And, how do you show that? I would be interested in a lawsuit that argued deliberate indifference for the police agencies who don't do much firearms training and use a standard of shoot, empty your clip. I mean, they don't literally say that, but that's the custom. And that to me would be an interesting lawsuit, which is what I think that the trooper did here. By the way, the trooper also 3 weeks later confessed to somebody else that he thought the white woman was a bad person and he thought she was shooting at him, even though his official statement was he never saw her. So, some real problems.
I'm sure he had a sudden reflection of his memory there. Something must have jolted that, I'm sure.
Well, I think he's better off with the original story because it's not believable he didn't see the white woman, but it is believable that he thought she was armed.
Well, thank you, Ward. And I know you spent some time researching that, so thank you very much. We've got a little over 2 minutes, guys. Ron, why don't you go start us off, and then Captain Brett.
I just wanted to say that I'm very shocked at the outcome of this lawsuit or these lawsuits. I was stunned. I'm thinking like, oh my God, they're going to be paying $30 million each. This woman shot, holding her hands up, shot twice, and then shot 8 more times afterwards, and then still shooting at her. And then the guy, 31 rounds shot. I just thought it was going to go the other way. I really did. And then I didn't realize, because you always hear that lack of training and blah, 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 yada, yada. I just thought that these people were done. But at some point someone has to say, I'm sorry, brush this lady off and make her whole again. I mean, you just have to. It just, I just feel weird about this whole case, and it is fascinating. But again, it went the exact opposite way that I thought it would go.
Oh, thank you, Captain.
I don't think it's unusual that if the guy's being truthful, that a couple of days after the incident that he actually remembered something else, because that's very, very possible. Both scenarios in his brain at that time, each of those time frames could be absolutely true as far as he believes them to be. I think there has to be a failure to train lawsuit soon. With all the stuff that's going on in the country and cops are not being trained, I believe that the lack of training is criminal. And I don't use that technically. I mean, it's just as an opinion. But, when you live in a state like Florida requires policemen to only qualify with their handguns every 2 years, it's very easy for an agency to go, listen, that's what the state mandates. We're under the state They tell us what we have to do. We do what we're supposed to do. That's the minimum, and nothing says we have to do more. So there needs to be some guidelines about that soon.
Thank you, Captain. Hey, guys, we're going to take a commercial break. Captain Brett's going to talk to us in just 1 second about the Wounded Blue, since Randy Sutton's not on the show this evening. We'll be right back. Captain Brett Bartlett, Wounded Blue, the floor is yours.
Last week we had Randy Sutton on, and excellent speaker, very talented guy, very experienced guy. And he brought something to our attention. It's a website, The Wounded Blue. And to my consternation, I had never seen it before, and I should have seen it before. So The Wounded Blue is an organization that helps officers who have been hurt on the job, wounded on the job, and for whatever reason, maybe it's the state they live in, maybe some legality, they're losing money by being wounded. They can't work, and they're losing money. Fortunately, here in Florida, we don't face that too often. And they help officers with suicide prevention, counseling. They're going to have a 3-day conference in Las Vegas coming up pretty soon, if not October 30th, I believe this. It's going to go over this. But the best thing is you can look at the website and you can donate money to the organization, and it's to help officers who are suffering financially, mentally, because they've done the right thing. They're hurt on the job, and now they're being, I don't know if I want to use the word punished, but it feels like punishment. They're suffering because of it. So go to thewoundedblue.org.
Thank you, Captain. All right, guys, we'll take another quick seconds here. We'll start our next segment. All right, welcome back to the Leo Roundtable Show. And thank you, Captain Bartlett, for giving the information on the Wounded Blue and giving the website, the .org, for guys to get more information about that conference coming up in Las Vegas. That'll be a heck of a time. On Police One and on Thin Blue Line TV. And remember, last week I said something was coming up. I talked with Dietrich there with redvoicemedia.com. And also with Thin Blue Line TV, Ray Dietrich. And I didn't want to spill the beans on it, but they've actually kind of put Thin Blue Line TV. They've got their own .com now. So all the law enforcement stuff, and you're going to see that on Thin Blue Line TV, and more of the political stuff you're going to see on redvoicemedia.com. So they've kind of made that distinction now. So they're also carrying our show and all these the segments that we do Tuesday through Saturday that Will puts up, they're putting all that stuff up on thinbluelinetv.com. So it's a great resource for us. So this particular topic that we're covering is covered on both Police One and Thin Blue Line TV. It says Georgia officer killed after being dragged by car in a traffic stop. Now, don't have a video to go along with this. It's an update, so I'm not going to have a ton of information on this. But Holly Springs, Georgia, I seem to remember talking about this agency recently. Police officers died after a traffic stop in which he fatally shot a man, and possibly as the officer was being dragged. So Holly Springs Police Chief Tommy Kelly said that investigators believe that Holly Springs officer Joe Burson shot the suspect late Wednesday when he was being dragged by a vehicle, and they said that an inquiry is going on. The Georgia Bureau of Investigations, or GBI, has been brought into this, and they've got spokesperson Nellie Miles saying that Burson, who's the cop, was dragged but managed to fire shots at the suspect suspect. She said that Burson and the suspect, they both died despite first aid. And the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI, they're investigating the shooting of the suspect. Officials had initially said Thursday that Burson, the cop, was shot to death, and that the deceased suspect was not immediately, well, he wasn't immediately named in the article, but now, of course, they've got new information to light. And the officer was a 25-year-old officer. So, kind of knew the police work any way you look at it. If there's no comments on that, I will move on to the next story then, but that's the update on that. We've got a video that we're going to be covering here, and it's on Police One, and it's titled "Confessed Killer Lunges for a Cop's Gun in an Interview Room." Guys, not many times, as a police officer that you have this much control of an environment, but in interview rooms, you should. But it's just a wild video, and I'm not saying that it couldn't happen to any of us, because it could. And these are interview rooms. It's not inside the jail. It's something where you're in your own agency. Typically, you have your weapon on you. But we've got. This happened in Las Vegas, so I wish Randy Sutton was on, but a police interrogation at a Las Vegas Metro police station, it turned potentially lethal in seconds, and the video was released on Thursday. And from a security camera, the suspect is seen lunging across the table and grabbing an officer's firearm. And you heard verbalization pretty good about, gun. He's got the gun. So according to Fox 5, the suspect is Terrell Rhodes, and the man moments before had confessed to killing a 2-year-old. Rhodes was emotional when he made a grab for the gun. And you can hear him saying, "Let me out of here. I can't go back." And several officers piled in the room to pin him down and wrestle the officer's firearm away. Rhodes has pled not guilty. I guess I must say, and David, I hope that you open your mic up to talk about this. I must say I was waiting for someone, since they're fighting over the gun, and yeah, you've got a number of officers. It's kind of hard to see. You can't really tell how many people have got a hold of the gun, where the gun's pointed at, if the guy's hand's in the trigger guard or not. But I was waiting for someone to put a gun to his temple and just pull the trigger and end this mess. But that didn't happen. But it went on long enough for me to be uncomfortable with it. David, we've got 3 minutes. Go ahead.
There's the word you're looking for, uncomfortable with it. Interview rooms are tight spots usually. There's not a lot of room to maneuver, and you're up close and personal, and there's a reason for that. Any of us that have been through interview techniques and whatnot, you learn how to talk to people in those tight, close places to get the desired result, or to get the truth, get the confession, whatever you want to call it. It's hard. The point being, you couldn't see what was going on at the bottom of the scrum with for the gun. So hopefully the officers there were communicating with each other, saying, "I've got a hold of the gun. He can't shoot it. Let's just, slowly pry it out of his hand, or punch him into submission," as the female detective appeared to be doing to the side of his head a couple of times. But those tight spots, you're interviewing a guy for a homicide. You got to be super, super vigilant with yourself in those places, because somebody like that, at the end there, they come down to, like he said, he's got nothing to lose at that point. So it was uncomfortable. I'll just leave it that way. Policy being what it is, if they don't have a policy about firearms inside interview rooms, perhaps they will shortly.
All right, thanks. We got a minute and a half, Captain. Go ahead.
First thing I noticed was that big old ring at the end of the desk where they could have handcuffed him to it. That's why that ring is there. You take one hand out of the fight, you can win the fight a little bit better. But I tell you, uncomfortable was what I was feeling around my gut when they were fighting for this gun. Because, oh my gosh, I mean, if we didn't already know the outcome, if you showed that to us cold, I'm thinking somebody's going to get shot. He had that gun facing her. The other guy jumped in. And that room is too small for that environment.